Welcome to Episode 1, Offsite, the Evolution of Construction. In this episode, PR specialist Mike Newby is joined by Professor Marco Imperadori to discuss how offsite and industrialized construction are reshaping the way we build.
Professor Marco Imperadori, welcome to Building on the Rocks.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Marco, you are not just an expert in building innovation, you're a professor. So you teach other experts and you're also a consultant and you're active in the industry. So I'd love to pick your brains about the evolution of industrialized construction. So I'm going to kick off the conversation with a quote from a great master, Le Corbusier. Architecture is the learned game, correct and magnificent, of forms assembled in light. What do you make of that?
Great quote by a great master who helped to shape what we think today is an architect or architecture. Even if now, of course, we see an evolution and we see a more integrated process in the design, but for sure this quote is a great quote to start.
Now, as a learned man yourself, I'm interested to know if the rules of the game change with offsite construction.
I think so, and also the rules of the approach change, because Le Corbusier was mainly speaking about the light and the volumes from the outside. We live in the inside. So it was taking care of something like plastic shapes, about aesthetics, but what about the people living inside? What about the impact on the planet? And I think industrialization really can bring these new steps to have quality products, to have new processes, to have a new paradigm, but also to take care, we will see, to people and planet.
Yeah, so the rules of the game are the same.
The rules of the game are always the same, but the game is changing. It's like in other fields of industrialization, but also in our society. There is an evolution, and we see this also in the field of architecture.
That makes perfect sense. Now, as a layman, I can't always tell if I'm looking at a modular building that's been built offsite, but I'd be interested to know some examples of your favorite modular architecture.
What about favorite? I can go back again to the modern movement and quote Charles and Ray Eames, two great of the design and architecture, and the Pacific Palisades house they built. It's a house that is really built up with existing products on the markets. So trusses, metal trusses, panels, color, bracings. And this shows how we can use these ingredients to make a beautiful architecture. And this is totally built offsite, every piece, every element, and assembled on site, and with a great proportion and great light. So I think this is the example I would like to quote as a let's say the DNA that can bring to other proposals.
Cool. As a layman, it's quite mind blowing that this is even sort of an approach to building. So let's sort of go back and put a definition on offsite and industrialized. How would you define those terms? I
define the fact that the site of construction, except of the foundation, where of course you need to pour concrete and you need to tackle to the ground, all the other elements are produced outside in another space and in different spaces. So the platform, the supply chain really is coming from other sites and is not built there, but is built elsewhere and connected there, dry connections. This means a lot of saving water on the site, for example. This means that I can disassemble the building. So this means to introduce a different paradigm, as I was saying also before, that is closer to what human being thinks about what's happening in actual society. For example, think about an airplane, think about a boat, think about a telephone. Everything is built industrial in industry, in a factory, and assembled and maybe also disassembled in the future. So I think is a totally different process.
I've heard people use the term prefab before. Is that kind of interchangeable?
Prefab I don't like, because especially in Italy, if you speak about prefabrication, which is prefabbricazione, people will react, because after the war, the prefab was heavy prefabrication, using concrete, using rigid system, creating parallelepiped structure, very rigid, and ugly structure mainly. Also in France, also all over, from France to Russia, the system were French, Camus, Serpec, and Coignet. And this created all this rigidity of the blocks. I think that industrialization I like most, because this can create total variation. And this cope with the architect's needs, with the society and architects' needs, because architects want to express. So they want to have a flexible system. They want to no constraints to the shape, no constraints to the aesthetics. And I think now the actual industrialization allows it.
So that early post-war foray into prefab, has that caused kind of lingering misconceptions about industrialized construction?
Yes, well, at that time, there was a need of quantity. After the destruction of a war is terrible. And again, if we requote Le Corbusier or Walter Gropius or all those master Wrights, Eames, etc., they were in between two wars. And Bauhaus was exactly 100 years ago, exactly in between the First and the Second World War. So a terrible period for a human being, and no possibility of coping with an industrial field which was mature. The industry was totally devoted to war. Especially steel industry. And what happened after the war, it was the need of build quickly, so every system was used because of need of speed and quantity. And now, luckily, after a certain time of peace, I think that is the time where mature industry from different fields can give a quality product, which is the house for everyone to live comfortably and to reduce the impacts towards nature.
Yeah, they say necessity breeds innovation, but I suppose it takes some time for that innovation to be finessed.
Yes, innovation is, I'm fascinated because if you translate projects come from Latin, proiectare, that you throw yourself in advance, in front. You have to see something that is not existing. Or the invention. Invention comes from Latin, again, invenio, that I find something, I go beyond. And innovation is like that. You go beyond. And so I think that a lot of this innovation doesn't come from the designers, come from the industry, and the designers dialogue, even us professors, we dialogue with industry and we produce something new together. I think this is a moment where we can really see the possibility of merging designers, academics, and industry in a very positive and proactive way.
Well, I knew you were a learned man, Marco, but Latin, wow, you've really set the bar high for the podcast. So I know that sandwich panels are a sort of a critical part of the kind of modular offsite construction. How do they fit in and how do they impact performance?
Yeah, I'm fascinated about sandwich panels and the fact that they were considered some years ago, I think, a commodity. So something cheap, something quick to use, something maybe not so nice. Now they became premium products or even star products. So they can cope with photovoltaics, they can cope with new facades. So you don't even see anymore the sandwich panels, but they are very good because you can close big parts of the building very quickly and you can have outside beautiful finishing, so you can have other qualities. So now the product is really shifting. And again, this means that we can offer to any, let's say, city, any society, new way to express architecture and space, maybe quickly with performances, using these elements. So these elements are part of this lightweight dry construction. So the structure behind can be concrete, skeleton in concrete, can be steel, can be wood, but outside the skin, etc., can be done with this sandwich panel. Inside, the layering of plasterboards, etc., will be used, and in the gaps, again, insulation. The panels of insulation, especially the stone wool panels, they are good for both insulation and thermal delay. So I think now the sandwich panels, they offer multiple performance. Fireproofing, thermal delay, insulation, sound absorbing if I need. So I can really tailor the solution and the layered solution of a wall, which is lighter. And so the wall is really changing. Yeah, let's talk about the wall. It's not an heavy thing, but it's a light thing made out of performances and multiple performances. So I have a layered solution.
That sounds to my ear like a very efficient, in principle, kind of approach. And I'd be interested in if you've got any stats or case studies to back that up, any wow moments to reference.
Well, there are many. I mean, it's different because then sometimes the element, you don't see it anymore. You see, the element is inside the building that you cannot really show. We have some, well, I don't want to quote one I was involved with, but we were engaged in this little space in Cremona in Italy, which is called Synapsi, dedicated to people and children with special needs and their families. And in that case, for example, in between the sandwich is in between. And outside there is a beautiful facade multicolored, and inside a multi-layer. So I don't see anymore, but it's really efficient. And it gives all the performance that were designed. So now we can really design the performance.
So what was the single most important contributing factor to that particular project?
Well, I think that what is important is to think to a building that is potentially also totally recyclable, reusable, dismountable. when normally buildings are not. So you have an embodied energy. If you imagine a heavy wall with bricks, etc., that in a day that you need flexibility, you have to dismantle it. It will cost you and the society and the impact. And the use of on-site during the construction of a very few amount of water, because everything is dry. So the industrial process allow us, like in any fields of the goods that we use, and so also in building and construction, to reduce the resources we need. Speaking about steel, in sandwich panels, we use very thin steel. Or speaking about steel again, a construction of a facade, etc., can be done with cold formed system in steel. So we reduce it and we bend it, giving more resistance to the rigidity of the system by using less material. Of course, then we need to control the fire impact, etc. A lot of other requisites, but that's our job. It's our job as a designer. It's not only to design space and the shape, but also to rely on performance. When you buy a car, you ask how much does it take to make 10 kilometers or 100 kilometers, how much is reliable, etc., etc. The same should be for the house, performances.
Yeah, and it's sort of that approach allows you're thinking about construction, but you're also thinking about deconstruction, and you're
of course,
even thinking about reconstruction.
We should at least a couple of mortgage, also 50 years, okay? We have to have in mind that what we do on this planet is cyclical, recyclable, okay? Cyclical means becomes into a cycle or into a spiral of upcycle. If we only think about consumables, as our society does, then we create problems. I was quoting, I think, Telmo Pievani is a philosopher in Italy that's saying, he was saying that today the humans produce the same amount of material we transform as the biomass, exactly equal today. And in the next 20 years, it will be double. So you imagine we should make something that goes back to cycles. Also waste, for example. Waste are a resource, so resource are a source again of something. Stone wool can be recycled. Okay, rock cycle is a possibility. I need to disassemble steel, become steel for a sandwich panel, a car, everything different, everything else. So I mean, we should have in mind to design things in a cyclical way.
And I suppose in Europe we have this issue that much of the building stock that will exist in 100 years' time already exists. So we can't really afford not to do this.
This is our oil, because it's the existing stock. We know 90% of the stock will be still in use in the next 50 years, 2050 or more. And so how to refurbish it? Because of course you can take it down. Well, when you take it down, you have all the waste. You need to get rid of this waste in a way, and you need a lot of energy. If we keep the building as they are, the skeleton, the structure, so the embodied energy is that if it works, you need to check and assess the structural behavior. And then relayering. We have another word coming from Latin, but in Italian, which is palinsesto. Palinsesto is that you create different layers. If you look also historical building in Italy, they have different plaster layers. So you can go back to the Middle Age or to the Renaissance and come to the 18th century. Now the layering is with dry, lightweight system. So we can add insulation where insulation was lacking. For example, now you see London, and a characteristic of London or England is these red bricks. But London before 1666 was all wood. Then the Great Fire totally changed the paradigm, and because of fire. But at that time, there was not the issue of, let's say, sustainability, energy savings. And many of these houses are totally leaking about the energy saving. UK did a lot with a lot of research and all the institutes in UK. And I think now we are ready, again, to add to this construction new performance layers. But of course, we need to give, especially if we speak about towers, etc., performance which are also coping with safety, fire safety, etc. This is very important.
So for new building stock, this industrialized approach is very appealing. But have you ever seen industrialized approaches to construction stumble? Have you ever seen any problems?
Well, stumble are possible, like in any, let's say, human activity, and they are possible if the industrialization is not cared in terms of detailing, in terms of, let's say, any company doing that, they must really follow a quality line, a quality check, like any, let's say, any activity of industrialization out of the construction. So I think also construction must cope with that.
So they're problems, but they're problems that have always existed.
Problems can exist in every field, but the quality process chain and the activity in an industry, normally they reduce this kind of errors because you can reply some solution. And what is interesting is that the industry nowadays is very flexible in terms of you can produce variation on that. And so I think, and the evolution of digitalization, you have a lot of, you can preview it. Thanks to BIM, thanks to many things. So you can prevent clash detection. You can really perform in a quality way the sector of construction. We can now today speak about industry of construction for the first time, I think, ever.
You brought up the Great Fire of London earlier, thinking of London, geography. I'm wondering if there are other regions that are picking up industrialized construction faster? Is there anywhere that's like really embracing it?
Well, I see all Central Europe where, because of the codes, because you can quote the British standards, we can quote the Deutsche Industrie Norm and the DIN, all these norms and the Euro codes. So in Europe, we did a great job, I think, of quality. All around the world, of course, it's very different. For example, prefab and industrialization construction in USA, for example, or Canada is long-lasting. But in that case, sometimes the quality of some solution is not so good as the one we have in Europe. The clients you have in Europe, they ask for long-lasting and performances, while in other markets it's very quick. So we can see shifting markets all around the world, and every market is very different. For example, speaking about cars, I was laughing yesterday because when cars introduced the automatic pulls to take down the, I don't know, you call the glasses.
Yeah.
In Italy, you could not sell any car anymore straight on manual, for example, because Italian market at that time is very reactive to innovation, while other markets are maybe more resistant. But Germany at that time went on 10 years with possibility of both as an optional. So I think that these are possibilities that Central Europe gets in a different way, but they are all already there. France, Switzerland, Germany, UK, all Italy, Northern Italy. We have many cases of industrialization going on, and many companies growing. Every year we see growing in Italy.
So in the timeline of industrialized construction, starting with that kind of the early stages, the prefab stumble post-war, and then it becoming more and more, I guess, architecturally satisfying, more embraced across Europe. Do you think it's going to change jobs? Is it going to change how architects are trained?
This can help. I mean, we see now the crisis of automotive everywhere in Europe. In automotive, you have a lot of robotics. Maybe these robots can be turned to be used in the robotics that you have in the industrialization of buildings, because also there we have robots. And the workers. The workers, they work in the automotive, for example, they are very skilled mechanical workers. And nowadays, these kind of workers can be employed, I think, easily, at least. They can change a little bit, but in the sector where it's needed. In this case, for housing, for example, to renew the existing stock and to make the new housing. So I think this is a possibility, because workers in the industrialized construction are less workers of force, are more workers of skills. And so both because then on the site I need to assemble the elements, but before in a factory I need to make it. And I don't make the wall standing or maybe standing at 40 meters from the ground. I make it on a platform, standing, so also for the job is safer, and it's following a safer project and a skilled mechanical project. So in 1960, Rainer Barnum was writing his famous book about the design in the first machine age. Now we are in the digital industrialization age, which is the age we live every day in our society.
Well, they say time flies when you're having an interesting conversation. We're nearly out of time, so I've got a quick fire round of questions for you, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, give me one myth about industrialized construction that needs busting.
The myth is the myth of quality.
Great. What's your elevator pitch to a skeptical developer who maybe doesn't see that they have questions about quality?
Believe in innovation.
Give me one word you hope people associate with modular by 2030.
Modular means to grow, to grow and to be more sustainable.
Now let's circle back to our quote that we started the episode with. Architecture is the learned game, correct and magnificent, of forms assembled in light. Given all we've discussed, how would you rewrite Le Corbusier's quote for Offsite?
No, I don't want to be arrogant because Le Corbusier was a great master, but I will reshape it because Le Corbusier speaks about the object itself. But the object is just a tool. People live inside, mainly in the concavity, so we need to think about inside, not only the shape, the light, and then the planet is outside. So we need to have the shape, the building, the light, whatever, the aesthetics, but then to take care of who is living in, the society around, and the planet. So I think I would ask him if I will meet me one day, Le Corbusier, wherever, wherever I could meet him to write something like that.
Professor Marco Imperadori, thank you so much for joining me on Building on the Rocks.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on Building on the Rocks, brought to you by Rockwool Core Solutions. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our next episode.